Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Lens, presented by Jott-Nyx Paranormal. My name is Chad Thomas, and that guy over there is Jamie Widener. How are you doing, Jamie?
I'm great, Chad. Thanks. How are you? The usual. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
Pleasantries. It's funny. Every time I host and I go, he's that guy, I'm pointing the wrong way as well. It's just so funny. Like our instinct goes, because we're looking at each other, right? So you would be there to me,
Right.
but you're really there on the
Yep.
screen, reverse. So, boom.
So, anyway.
Hey, good evening, Todd and Carmela, Jenny. Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming. Anything going on this weekend, Chad?
I worked.
Yeah.
My son moved.
I know. I helped him.
I went to help him on Friday night, and by the time I got done work, he's like, "Oh, it's already packed up." So I just took him to Beanie's. He and the guy who were out loading the truck, I took him to Beanie's. We had some wings and called it a night. So
yeah, it's funny. He texted me in the morning, or maybe it was Friday night even. He said people are dropping like flies, and I'm like, oh gosh, this poor dude's by himself. I get there, and there's like 8 people helping him. I'm like, really? I did, and everybody was 20 something. So I'm being the responsible adult. I think you want to be there for that, or somebody there for that.
right.
So, I directed a lot of traffic, and it got done really quick. I mean,
Yeah, that's
this kind of thing. But his new place is it's 2 blocks from Booby's Brewery. He's going to walk right down the tracks and be there.
Mm-hmm.
He said Beanie's is right there. Mountjoy, PA. A lot of happening stuff. He's right there in the heart of downtown. So,
yep.
Quick, easy in and out for work. He's got it made. He figured this one out. So, good
job. Yeah, I mean that was really it for me. What about you? Anything exciting?
Well, again, I helped somebody move, and then let's see. Sunday was house stuff, yard work, all that stuff, the usual. So nice. I got to see the Eagles game, which was fantastic. I was
that's good.
Cursing through most of it, and then cheering at the end. So,
good.
So a normal Eagles game right there, right?
Yep.
So it was fun though to get to sit back and watch one for once.
Oh, good.
And not being on the hustle like we always are, getting other stuff done. So
right.
Yeah, easy peasy. And then Mondays, back in the swing. So here we are Tuesday night already.
Mm-hmm. But we're looking forward to this weekend because it's a investigation weekend at the brewery. So
game day. Great.
Yep. Exactly.
So, it's been a minute. So it's nice. And I realized something too. We're going to be, here we are coming up on the 28th of Saturday. We have an investigation on Saturday the 5th here in Columbia, PA, or in Columbia, PA. I'm not there either, but in Columbia, PA is the annual All the Twitch Festival. So I want to say it's like the 13th or 14th annual. And if I'll throw a little bit further back to our Urban Legends episode a while ago, that the All the Twitch is a local variation of Bigfoot, but he's a little guy. And it's a PA Dutch term for apple snitcher, basically someone who tosses apples at people. And folklore, perhaps real sightings have been claimed, but it's become a festival at a river park here in Columbia, PA. So if anybody's in the region and needs something to do, there's vendors and fun and food, and it's just kind of gorgeous this time of year. So it'll be a nice fall day. So come on out our way. And then investigation weekend, and after on the 12th and the 19th is this particular event. And then it's just like it's spooky season, so we're busy. It's great.
Yep. Jenny also brought up that this weekend is National Ghost Hunting Day, this Saturday. So thanks for reminding. I was going to say that and I forgot, and I'm glad Jenny brought it up. So
there's Bert and Heather Lynch. Welcome, guys. Jim Renardo. Welcome, Jim. Good to see you again. Yeah, we need this out meeting like this. I know, right?
So Kaya will have a stand at the Albert British Festival, and Heather and Bert are going to be with us. So I'm going to try to spend some time down there. We'll have to see how it goes because it's a busy weekend. There's a lot going on.
Well, they all are, right? They are anymore. So, but it's time well spent. Yeah, it's around people in the field, and some interesting stuff there. And we will. I think we will have our full-size K2 meter that Chad's company graciously helped create for us, or did create for us, I should say. But it's 5 feet tall or so.
Something like that, yeah.
5 feet. It actually works as lights. and such on. I can't say it works as an EMF detector, but
no, not quite. But
it's pretty cool looking. So, yeah, good work.
Yeah,
having that out there. So, yeah, looking forward to it. Obviously, weather's a big part of this, but yeah, that will be fine. Of course, it can happen.
It could rain.
I almost jinxed it and said it never snows this early, right? There it comes.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
It's snowing now, by the way. Anyway, we're talking about Susquehanna River, but that's not the body of water we want to talk about tonight, is it?
No, you're right. We're not going to talk about that, but we are going to talk about a different area of land, water. Have you ever heard of the Flannan Isles, Jamie?
The Flannan Isles?
Flannan, Flannan Isles.
No, I can't say no.
Okay. I didn't think you had. It's a small group of islands in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. All right. It's about 20 miles west of the Isle of Lewis.
Yes, Todd, there is a blizzard. That's all. It's on me. I will come and shovel you out. I promise. Sorry.
So, the total land in the group of islands is about 125 acres. All right. The islands are also known as the Seven Hunters now. In the Middle Ages, it may have been known as the Seven Haley Islands or Seven Holy Islands. The chain of islands was named after Flannan Mac Tordelbag. There's a good Scottish, actually Irish name.
As fast, right?
Or Tordelbag. He was. He was a 7th century Scottish saint whose father was the Turlough of Thomond, an Irish chieftain. So he was one of the kings of Ireland. Okay. Flannan was a monk, and he made a pilgrimage to Rome. When he did, Pope John IV consecrated him the first bishop of Killaloe, of which he is the patron saint. Flannan built a chapel. Actually, here I've got a map up showing where this chain of islands is in relation to Scotland. Flannan built a chapel on the island of Eilean Mor, though I'm not sure why he built this chapel here. Other than some seabirds, the isle was uninhabited. For centuries, shepherds...
Maybe that's why, right?
What, because of the seabirds?
Well, because it's uninhabited. Yeah. Maybe that's why he built it.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, yeah, think about it. Solitude, solstice, you get alone time. And,
possibly. For many centuries, shepherds would graze their sheep there and felt they were safe from being poached. But the shepherds refused to spend the night on the island because they were fearful of the spirits that they believed to haunt it. A sinister, watchful presence was said to reside there. According to the History of Scotland's Western Isles, a book written in 1695, these remote islands were places of inherent sanctity, and there was a custom that arriving on the island, one would uncover their heads and make a turn sunways around, thanking God for the safety. It was said that there was a definite presence of an aura that was undeniably shrouded the island. So, sort of interesting. But we're going to focus the paranormal lens tonight on Eilean Mor, or the Big Isle. Now, it's funny because Scotland has 2 islands that are called Eilean Mor. They're in different chains, but because it means Big Isle, I'm sure it was like, oh, well, we're going to call that one Big Isle. And yeah, the completely different regions. So I guess it's not a big deal. The island is about 43 acres, mainly rocky, with a big plateau. Oh, jumped too far there. Mainly, it's a big cliff and a big plateau on top of it. The island sits in the remote part of the northern Atlantic Ocean. This area is known for dense fog, which would hide the jagged coastlines of the Flannan Isles. Sailors feared this area. There were many ships that were caught on the rocks and sank to the sea. Remnants of these ships were scattered on the shores of the islands and the seafloor in the area. Since this was such a treacherous area and the cliffs of Eilean Mor were almost 150 feet above sea level, it was decided in the mid-1890s that it would be a good place for a lighthouse. Sort of makes sense because you need those in those remote places. The Northern Lighthouse Board commissioned David Allen Stevenson to design a lighthouse that would guide ships through one of the wildest parts of the Atlantic Ocean. Stevenson designed a 75-foot lighthouse. The beam of light it admitted could be seen for 20 miles under perfect conditions. There's a key. He was noted as saying to the board, "There is little protection from the Atlantic swell, which is seldom at rest." The locals of the Flannans warned that the intrusion on the island would unleash St. Flannan's wrath. Nevertheless, construction began on the structure and its amenities in 1895. This included the lighthouse, 2 landing platforms, stairs, and railway track and other equipment. The total cost for the lighthouse was it's 1899, 1,899 British pounds, which is also with the year that it went into operation was 1899. So I thought that was funny. Converted for inflation and to the US dollar, today's cost would be about $407,000. Another $3,526 was spent on the shore station on the Isle of Lewis in Brestclete. I'm going to sidetrack a little bit here and explain how lighthouse crews worked during that time period, at least for the Northern Lighthouse Board. If a lighthouse was located near a town, the keepers and the families would live on the grounds of the lighthouse. In the case of the Flannan Isle Lighthouse, there was a remote lighthouse or rock station, and then a shore station. The shore station was built as an observation point for the lighthouse. This was on the mainland where the families of the on-duty keepers would stay. In this situation, there was a crew of lighthouse keepers on station for 6 weeks. There was a crew of 4 people with 3 on station and 1 on leave for 2 weeks, so they would rotate through. This was a very isolated job in a very desolate area. The supply ship came every 2 weeks, and that was the only way on or off the island. So you were there for 6 weeks at a time, but the soonest you could leave would be 2 weeks if there was an emergency. So I can't imagine living that kind of life. There were many rules and regulations when it came to being on station. These included making sure gear was stowed correctly for boat landings, making sure that there was someone in the lighthouse and awake 24 hours a day. But the number one rule was never let the light go out or be out of sequence. This lighthouse was 2 beams of light every 30 seconds. So each lighthouse had its own signal, so they knew the ships would know where they are, and that's how they could tell. They had a chart of what the flashes of light were, which was sort of interesting. When not tending the light at night, there were other maintenance tasks to be taken care of. This included moving gear from the landing areas, cleaning, painting, cooking, maintaining the light and its fuel and its mechanics. It was far from a glorious job, but Eilean Mor was even more difficult. The shore station was 20 miles away. There was typically bad weather, so the observers on the shore station could seldom see the lighthouse or its light. I mean, typically they could see the light, but it wasn't every day that they could see the light. When the supply ship arrived, gear and supplies had to be craned off the ship and then pulled via a rail system up a steep slope. And there, I do have a picture of that. If you're seeing the video, it's a pretty steep slope that had to go up.
Yeah. Wow.
The rail system used a steam-powered engine located in a shed by the lighthouse that drove a pulley-guided cable attached to a cart. This made getting the gear up to the lighthouse easier, but can you imagine getting 326-pound barrels of paraffin or kerosene off the ship and then up this hill? Remember, this was the North Atlantic, so it was a rocky coast with crashing waves, and they were using a block and tackle system to lift everything they needed off the ship. So life was definitely not easy.
It sounds pretty simple, though, right?
Yeah.
No, absolutely nothing about that was easy.
So the lighthouse went online and was lit officially on December 7th, 1899. It burned about 20 barrels of fuel a year. Records show that the station was tended by 4 men. They were James Ducat, who was 43, Thomas Marshall, who was 40, Donald MacArthur, who was 28, and Joseph Mor. I don't have an age on him. Ducat was the principal keeper. He had been promoted from an assistant one station before this. And he didn't really want to go to this station, but he was talked into it by the superintendent. Let's see. MacArthur was an occasional keeper who was filling in for William Ross, who was on sick leave. Marshall was an assistant keeper, and Joseph Mor was an assistant keeper. Now, the incident we're going to talk about, Joseph Mor was on shore leave when this whole thing started. On December 7th, 1900, Ducat, Marshall, and MacArthur started their next regular rotation. The superintendent of lighthouses, Robert Muirhead, had made the trip on the supply ship to check on the lighthouse. I'm presuming that this was because the lighthouse had been operating for 1 year and he wanted to just make sure everything was in good working order. During this trip, Muirhead had a conversation with Ducat, saying that they were having visibility issues and that they wouldn't be able to observe the lighthouse from the shore station in Brestlet. It was a general practice for the shore station to watch the rock station with a telescope. This allowed the lighthouse crews to raise a signal flag in case of an emergency. At this point, there was no radio or other communications available. This was not unusual or unexpected, so Muirhead bid the lighthouse team adieu and returned to the shore station. The lighthouse crews went on about their business. Ships that passed the lighthouse on December 12th and 7th and 12th had nothing unusual to report. A steamship, the SS Arctur, was sailing from Philadelphia to Lythe, Scotland on December 15th and 16th. It was noted in the Arctur's log that the light from the Flannan Island lighthouse was not seen during poor weather conditions. The Arctur docked in Lythe on December 18th. The lack of light was reported to the NLB, or National Lighthouse Board, but the report was delayed. Later investigations showed that the lighthouse itself had not been seen between the 7th and the 29th of December through the observation scope on Brestlet. However, the light was observed on December 7th, but not on the 8th, 9th, 10th, or 11th. It was seen on the 12th, but not again until the 26th. Sometimes, due to weather conditions, the lights would not be seen for 4 or 5 consecutive nights, but the long duration was a surprising occurrence that raised alarm in Lythe. Meanwhile, in Brestlet, the relief keeper was scheduled to depart to the rock station on December 21st. Unfortunately, due to the weather, the departure was delayed. It was not until December 26th that the relief vessel, the lighthouse tender Hesperus, was able to arrive on Eilean Mor. As you can imagine, it was with some trepidation that Joseph Mor approached the island. Not only was the island foreboding under normal circumstances, but the light hadn't been seen in almost 2 weeks. When the ship approached the island, things seemed to be amiss. The flagstaff had no flag on it. The provision boxes were not in place for restocking, and there were no keepers to greet the ship. The ship sounded its horn, fired a signal flare, but there was still no response from the island. Captain Harvey was in command of the Hesperus. He reported that there was no sign of life to be seen on the island. So Joseph Mor put ashore to find out what was going on. He climbed the 160 steps to the lighthouse, found both the main gate and door to the lighthouse closed and latched, but not locked.
Hold on. You got to admit that he climbed 160 steps, stopped for a few minutes to catch his breath.
Uh-huh.
And then,
yes, true. So, but no one was in the building. He did note that 2 of the 3 sets of oilskins were missing from their assigned hooks. Now, Jamie, do you know what an oilskin is?
Oh, I should know this. No.
It's like it's a cold weather raincoat type of thing. It was oiled to help shed water, keep them warm, things like that. So there were 3 people in the lighthouse, and 2 of the 3 sets of the oilskins were missing, because that was one thing that you took that you would take that with you. Obviously, you would want that, right, especially in December in the North Atlantic. So he returned to the ship and reported his findings to the captain. The captain asked for volunteers to stay on the island. He got one, and he assigned 2 others to get the lighthouse back up and running. So Moore returned to the island with Mr. McDonald, who was a buoy master who was on the vessel at the time, Seaman Eilean Mor and A. Campbell. They investigated and found things in order. The kitchen was tidy. The lamp was clean, trimmed, and the fuel reservoirs were full, and the machinery was working order. The light was basically waiting to be lit. The only thing that was amiss was the clock on the wall had not been wound and had stopped. The crew searched the lighthouse and scoured the island, but found no signs of the missing crew. They had landed on the east landing, and when they searched the west landing, they found several things out of place. At 108 feet above sea level, a box containing gear was broken, and the gear was strewn about. Iron railings were twisted and bent out of place, and the iron railway that the cart rode up and down on was torn away from its concrete base. There was a boulder that weighed over a ton that had been dislodged and moved quite a distance. And on the top of the cliff, the turf was torn back 33 feet from the edge. So you're talking the cliff that's, I think, what do we say, about 150 feet above sea level? Yeah. Something caused that to get torn back 33 feet. I have no idea what would happen there. Okay. So, on his return to Brestclete, Captain Harvey sent a telegram to the Northern Lighthouse Board dated December 26, 1900, stating, "A dreadful accident has happened at the Flannans. The three keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. Fired a rocket, but no response was made. Managed to land Moore, who went up to the station but found no keepers there. The clocks were stopped, and the other signs indicated the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows, they must have blown over the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane or something like that. Night coming on, we could not wait to make something as to their fate. I have left Moore, McDonald, buoy master, and 2 seamen on the island to keep the light burning until you make other arrangements. Will not return to Oban until I hear from you. I repeated this wire to Muirhead in case you are not at home. I will remain at the telegraph office tonight until it closes if you wish to wire me." So the crew went on about their normal duties.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Yep. So the ship comes, they find nobody. Right? Mm-hmm. Someone volunteers, others are voluntold to search the island.
Right.
Empty stuff is found. Right. And the unusual things are found, but then also oddities of like boulder move, turf torn up, all that stuff, but still no people are found anywhere on the island.
Right.
And then 4 dudes get left behind to run the place. How do you think they felt? That is not a volunteer at that point. That is a voluntold.
Well, right?
How do you feel about that?
Moore, it was his job, so he didn't have a choice. The buoy master, I think, also, like, when we talk about buoys like that, I mean, he's in charge of navigational aids as well. So I think he feels compelled to make sure the light is running. The other 2 seamen from the ship, they had no business being there. They didn't want to be there at all. So
it didn't. Here Todd and Carmela was thinking rogue wave, perhaps that caused the damage. But that's a big AZZ. Thank you for keeping it clean. Mm-hmm. Rogue wave, and then. And Jenny with that's a tsunami,
right?
150 feet. That is, that's 15 feet, 15 floors of a building. 10 foot of floor. That's massive. Mm-hmm. That would be something of that spirit of a tsunami more so than a rogue wave. Although I guess it's probably plausible, but again, unlikely in the North Atlantic, without causing damage to the island. Like the dock would have been gone. The landing dock would have been gone on that side of the island and all that. So.
So yeah, well, let's go on.
Back to the mystery. I apologize for sidetracking you there.
No, it's fine. So the crew went about their normal business duties, but further investigations took place. Superintendent Muirhead returned to the island on December 29th. Muirhead found everything as Mor had reported. The only additional thing he found was the keeper's logs. The National Records of Scotland open book website states this, and I'm going to read what they had. From the archives in the National Records of Scotland, we can trace the correspondence detailing the investigation of the men's disappearance, with letters written to the commissioner by Joseph Moore and a report submitted by the superintendent Robert Muirhead on 8 January 1901. From these, we know the last entries of the keeper's logs were for the 13th of December, but particulars for the 14th of December and the time of extinguishing the light on the 15th of December, along with barometer and thermometer readings and the wind conditions at 9 a.m. on the 15th, were all noted on a slate for transferring to the log later. So what that is saying is the lighthouse, the primary lighthouse keeper had a logbook, and it was his responsibility to write everything in the logbook. His assistants were not allowed to write in the logbook, so they charted everything on this slate on the wall, and then it was copied into the logbook.
Okay. He had the best penmanship, right? That's
yeah. We'll go with that. Yeah,
sure.
He was probably the most educated and could say the right things and not the wrong things, because that can get us in trouble. Everything was in order. The lamp was cleaned, the fountain full, blinds on the window, etc. And clear evidence of the work of the forenoon on the 15th having been completed, all of which suggest the men disappeared on the afternoon of Saturday, 15th December. The incident hit Muirhead hard. He had recruited these men and was the last to see them alive. I also found somewhere, one of my sources said he had bid them adieu, which was not typically the way a Scottish person would say goodbye. And that was the last thing that anybody ever said to these people. So he was a little troubled by that. So this is where the story technically ends. A new crew was stationed on the lighthouse. Changes were made over time. The steam-powered tram car was replaced by motorized trikes of sorts. Radio communication was installed, and in 1971, the lighthouse was automated, meaning nobody ever had to live on this island again. A helipad was installed to make maintenance trips easier. After that fateful day in December of 1900, no one else disappeared like these men did. The only remnants that were ever reported was hearing voices calling their names. These three men seemed to haunt the island. Though an official report was filed, people still questioned what happened to these men. So here are some of the common questions that were asked. Why had none of the bodies washed ashore if they'd been washed out to sea? This was the conclusion of the official report. 2 men went to the landing for some reason to tend to something, and one of them ended up in danger. The other 2 tried to save him, but ended up perishing as well. But why did their bodies never wash ashore anywhere? Why had one of the men left the lighthouse without taking his coat? First of all, leaving the lighthouse unattended was a major breach of protocol. If he had survived, he could have been fined and punished for doing this. And second, why would he have gone out without his weather gear? Another question asked is, why had 3 experienced lighthouse keepers been taken unaware by a freak wave? According to some sources, there were no storms in the area that day, but that does not rule out the possibility of a rogue wave. But this would not have been the first time that the lighthouse keepers would see one, and it would have been visible as it approached the island. So what are some of the explanations for the disappearances of Marshall, MacArthur, and Ducat? Here are some theories presented in the book The Lighthouse by Pete McCloskey. They were washed away by a storm or a sudden gust of wind. Muirhead noted that the landing platform on the island's western side had suffered severe storm damage, with twisted iron railings and a block of stone estimated to weigh a ton displaced onto the path. He concluded that the men must have gone in to repair the damage and been swept away by a wave. On December 15th, according to contemporary weather reports, the gale reached force 8 on the Beaufort scale. But Muir had dismissed this idea in his original 1901 report as the wind was westerly, I'm of the opinion, notwithstanding its great force, that it would have, from the direction that was blowing, have blown them up the island, not off the island. So why did the three men disappear? While the boots, coats, and oilskins belonging to Jott and Marshall were missing, Donald MacArthur's remained inside the lighthouse. It seems unlikely that in the freezing weather, he would have left the lighthouse wearing only shirt sleeves and rope-soled sandals. It was possible, of course, that Jott and Marshall had run into trouble at the landing stage, and that on hearing their cries for help, MacArthur had rushed down to their assistance before being washed away himself. But if he had left the lighthouse in a panic, why had he wasted precious time on closing both entrance doors and the gate to the yard? So, just more mysteries. Now, there's some discrepancies in logbook entries. I'm going to read something that was purported to be in a logbook entry, and it was said that it was put in by Marshall. December 12th, gale north by northwest, sea lashed to fury, storm bound 9 p.m. Never seen such a storm. Everything shipshape. Jott irritable. 12 p.m. Storm still raging. Wind steady. Stormbound. Cannot go out. Ship passed sounding foghorn. Could see lights of cabins. Jott quiet. MacArthur crying. December 13th. Storm continued through the night. Wind shifted west by north. Jott quiet. MacArthur praying. 12 noon. Gray daylight. Me, Jott, and MacArthur prayed. December 15th, 1 p.m. Storm ended. Sea calm. God is over all. Now, apparently, it is extremely unlikely that this was written in the official logbook. First of all, it was written by Marshall, who was the assistant keeper, so he should not have been in the logbooks at all. It is very unlikely also that he would have said that his superior was irritable. Not a good thing to do. Now, the earliest instance of the entries that McCloskey could find was in a 1965 book by Vincent Gaddis, the sensationalist American writer who first named the phenomenon of the Bermuda Triangle. So what a lot of people are saying is these were just a tale to go along with the story, that this was not actually written in the book, because it's not something that would be an official book. And why would there be an entry for the 15th and other entries on the slate board for the 15th? So that doesn't seem to make sense. So going back to McCloskey, he concluded that the most likely outcome is that one of the men fell from the steep steps carved into the western cliff while trying to secure some equipment in a storm. Now, Jott had previously been fined 5 shillings for failing to look after his equipment in bad weather, and he would have wanted to avoid another such a fine. McCloskey speculates that the other 2 would have tried to rescue him, but a giant wave would have washed away all 3 of them. So that's one theory. Another theory is violence between 3 men resulted in murder. McCloskey wrote the story around Donald John McLeod, a part-time harbor master who occasionally worked at the Lighthouse and was there when World War II started. One day, McLeod was working there with 2 other men when one succumbed to severe flu and another had a mental breakdown. The book says he tried to keep everything running on his own until the arrival of the relief crew on the Pole Star, which was 4 days away. The mentally unstable lightkeeper had threatened violence, which resulted in them having to overpower the out-of-control lightkeeper and tie him up. So could something similar have happened in 1900? MacArthur was said to have a volatile temper, but there is no evidence of such attacks, such as blood or evidence of a fight. But the other side of that is if you're in a desolate area in the middle of a storm, weird things are bound to happen. So who knows? Another thing is kidnapped off the island by pirates or foreign power. Now, this is considered highly unlikely because by the early 20th century, kidnappings from Scotland by pirates were largely eliminated. For over 300 years, the coastlines of the southwest of England were the mercy of the Barbary pirates, and from the coast of North Africa, comprised of North Africans, but also English and Dutch privateers. They were mainly based in the ports of Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, and they were aimed to capture slaves for the Arab slave market in North Africa. This just seems highly unlikely as well because, like we said earlier, pirates attacked. No, that doesn't make sense. So the last one is supernatural dark forces.
Ooh, do tell.
Well, there's not much here, but that's where we open for discussion. The island has long been associated with the supernatural. Subsequent lighthouse keepers at Eilean Mor reported strange voices in the wind calling out the names of the 3 dead men. We had that it was a religious island for a while. We had this ominous feeling when people would go to, that's sort of what I've got. I mean, there is no answer to this. The official report is they were swept off and out to sea. So I don't know. I want to cite my sources real quick here. Well, I Never is a YouTube channel by this great Scottishman who tells this story. I suggest checking it out. It's Well, I Never YouTube channel. The Northern Lighthouse Board webpage and Strange Outdoors webpage. And I also used Wikipedia just for some background stuff.
Okay. Would you put that YouTube channel in the chat so we all can find it?
Sure.
As the moment arises. I got to jump in here because I've been chomping for a little while. There's a lot of things here to unpack.
Yeah.
The thing that got me first was, before all of that, you're talking about a situation where people are isolated on, a desolate place without access to anything other than what they brought with them and the people who were with them. So there was always going to be that conflict at times. Just it's like when you're always stuck with your sibling. You're in the car on the long ride. You know what I mean.
Oh, I know what you mean. So, I've been on both sides of that.
Yes, right. And so I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. That happens with adults. In a space like this. And yes, they can get out and walk around the island and all that stuff, but they still have to come back to the same space. And you're talking about the North Atlantic in the winter. There is nothing good about being outside for very long. That would give you enough space away from someone who was just annoying the crap out of you. The day of the incident, or the other side of the island kind of thing on the incident, the moved boulder, the torn up turf, that stuff, natural elements. I'm thinking like wind shear, something's extraordinary,
Right.
As much as that can happen. But the mangled or bent up iron pieces really get me. That's not wind. Right. So something bent that, and something with force. The idea that these dudes just disappeared. There's so many things this could be, and of course it's mystical because there's no explanation. So did they get in a fight with each other? One grabbed the other one, pulled them over. They all fell off the cliff themselves.
Right.
This area, if you want to go back to the map, this is an area where there's a lot of water around them. They could have got washed anywhere. They could have washed up somewhere, just because they were in the water for so long that they were not identifiable, to who they were. And,
True.
Had anything in the water got a hold of them, they're food at that point. So, they might have come out less than whole from the water. It's possible, right? And then they might have well washed up somewhere. The uniqueness of this, and maybe something that kept coming through my mind is like the idea of when it's cold here, we don't go very far, right? And
Right.
the idea of cabin fever kicks in, right? Island fever is a thing too, because the island is only so big. You can only go so far. You can only do so much. You eventually you just run out of stuff, and then it gets tight.
Right.
Maybe an episode of that happened to one of them, and the others were trying to, he got manic, and they were trying to calm him, or maybe more than one of them. And then that would explain the fellow who left without his gear, and the others who did, trying to get him to come back. And in procedural sense, they close doors behind them because that's what you're supposed to do. Because otherwise, the elements are in your place. You leave the door open in the middle of winter, your house is cold.
Right.
So, there's a couple things that I can see here. But what happened after is the mystery still. The one thing that always comes to me here, and it's paranormal lens, right? So it could be aliens. They were abducted.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah. That aliens, you're not the first person to have suggested that, Jamie.
Aliens don't have a timeline with it. We think of for us in the U.S., the big deal was in the 60s and 70s. All these sightings, all these abduction stories. The big one was Travis Walton, but there's a lot of them. And we had an explosion of that. But this well could have been going on for a long time. This is an isolated place. If something happened to the people there, no one would know for a while. So
right.
And I guess that leads to the pirates too. These are definitely not the Pirates of the Caribbean. Jack Sparrow didn't roll up on the island, but the privateering concept of it more so than the pirate thing. Someone who was there for something that they had. They knew the value of goods on the island. That they were coming to take that thing away, and maybe that's how the equipment got mangled, and the iron and so forth got mangled up. It was trying to take it away. I don't know. There is so much mystery here. And
there is. Yeah.
It's a deeper thing than just a few moments of that's interesting. You want to, once you start thinking about it, you go, wow, this could be anything. Yeah, here we go. Right. Yeah. Tide and Carmel, it's a very interesting story. Definitely a head scratcher. Bermuda Triangle-ish. I think you just made up a word with triangle-ish, but I like it. It's probably a triple word score someday, so keep it. Perhaps abduction by interesting interdimensional beings. Nice. Yeah. Maybe. Right.
Yep.
We were we released today the episode with Steve Dills when he did Skinwalker Ranch with us last year onto the streaming services. And one of the things that he talks about is a portal opening on the ranch. And, if a portal could open there, why can't a portal open here? And something come through or take you out of your realm into theirs. All plausible things, right? I mean, because we don't know. Everything has to be on the table. Yeah. Here we go, Jenny. Thank you. Aliens, pirates, and oil keepers. I had them all on my bingo card tonight. You win the prize.
Yeah.
I had none of that. So, congratulations.
Yeah. I mean, and this incident did change things for the Northern Lighthouse Board. There was a family who was supposed to be a spotter that was supposed to check on the lighthouse several times a day. Now the family was a gamekeeper, not a lighthouse tender. So, they were supposed to check multiple times a day at specific times. And apparently he was away and he had his sons doing the job for him. So some of this reporting of whether the light was spotted or not gets questionable because, he was supposed to be doing it, but he wasn't actually writing it down in the law, things like that. One of the things that it did change was they talked about going from an emergency signal to a okay signal. Instead of only putting a signal up if there was an emergency, that there would be a daily signal at a certain time that things were okay. Which sort of makes sense, but if you can't see the island anyway,
right.
This
is all reliant on line of sight. And
exactly.
And that's the problem when you're in such a desolate place with the weather conditions, as you described earlier. There's fog, there's
mist,
rain,
there's
all this stuff, at least in the winter months. In the summer, it's still the same. There's still a cold weather channel, a cold weather current. So, you're still going to deal with the issues all along, and the visibility is really the biggest problem. We have the advantage today of global satellite positioning, all kinds of things with communication options. We don't have to rely on line of sight stuff anymore.
No.
But this was it. This was the lifeline at the time. And luckily there was something within a reasonable line of sight, even to see the place in the first place, or at all.
Right.
Otherwise, I can't imagine if they were beyond, even that range, what would happen, how they would do that. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine going to a job knowing that my family was going to be living 20 miles away and I get to see them every 2 weeks. It just amazes me that that's what people would sign up for. So,
well, there's got to be a big sign-on bonus, right?
No, it was no. They didn't. I mean, they did okay. Lighthouse keepers did okay, but it wasn't. It was sort of an honored job.
It's my understanding. I have a little bit of experience with lighthouses I used to live in Monterey, California. And there was the Monterey Lighthouse is one of those classic ones, not as classic as our East Coast ones because they're forever old. But the Monterey one sits at the mouth of Monterey Bay. It's a whole bunch of rocks and shoals in that area. So it was the one that was protecting ships coming into the bay. And the keepers there, luckily it's on land, so it's not an island out somewhere where you have to get transit. But they couldn't leave, like you described. As these folks couldn't leave, they have rotations, they had cycles. Somebody had to be on site. It was a lighted light. I mean, that's redundant, I know, but in the sense it was a flame lit light at first, and then it went to electricity. Had the advantage of that when electricity finally got to that area. They could do that because they didn't have to run it out to an island somewhere. So the idea of it all, but those folks were usually single men who didn't have families because of the rigor of their occupation. They had to be on schedule for 12 hours a day. Light always had to be on, even in daytime. Everything had to be operational. Everything you described is what I'm familiar with from there, and the time I've spent with it. And therefore, because someone spends their life in passion there, that when they go, there's believed to be residual energy, of them being there. So lighthouses are traditionally haunted places because of that, and these people had jobs for life, or at least as long as they wanted them. And should they have a calling, they do find that person, they marry, all that stuff, and then they may step away. But it is interesting, to say the least, how there's such a tenure with people in these positions.
No, I think that's something that's different than what the North Atlantic Northern Lighthouse Board, because they had rotations, because they would rotate through different lighthouses, and you get promoted, and I just found it fascinating that there was a team. Like, I never thought about it, but you have to have the lighthouse burning anytime it's dark. So
it has to be ready. Oh, and that's like that's like an emergency services thing, right? If you're a professional firefighter, we here in our area have a lot of volunteer services. So folks aren't always in the station 24/7. But if you're a professional, and you work in a big city, you live there. That's it. Or you're living there while you're on shift, which could be hours or days at a time, your rotation. And then of course, when the call comes, you're prepared. It's the same idea here. They have to be ready and committed in. So it makes sense. And the only difference, I think, with the Northern Lighthouse Board versus like Monterey is that they have other ones under their purview to rotate people through. And that's kind of smart, right? So you don't get that island fever. You don't get that complacency. Right. You don't get the rub of that same person agitating you all the time with whatever it is they do. They snore, they chew with their mouth open. Right. They leave their socks everywhere, whatever. All the things that could be enough just after time and time to absolutely irritate you to the point of breaking. I mean, this is pretty much a military stuff you fight against. This is pretty much a military assignment. Like you were assigned people, and you were assigned a station, and you covered it. So Bert volunteered Heather and he to go there to talk to the spirits, but I think Heather's saying, no, I'm not climbing those steps. So
I don't blame you, Heather. It's a lot of steps.
Yes. Yeah. There's no escalator on this one.
No. But you can fly in now. There's a helipad there now, so you're all set.
That's fair. Next trip to the Emerald Isle, just hop a flight up, and you're there. You go. And here it is.
Here it is.
How long it was going to take? Jenny with the bingo win and road trip. I think that's you get double points tonight.
We talked about families. Two of these men did have families. I think the two were married, and between them there were 6 children. So that this hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
And Heather got the road trip in. So
this is also of an era when he went away to work.
True.
Often. And whether or not he comes back or not, it depends on the type of job. But that would not be that unusual for the type of work that he needed to do. Make the money he needed to go away.
Right.
And sometimes it's just to the city from the country. But here we are. This is still in country, but it's leaving.
Right.
But distance.
But there were certain jobs that were considered treacherous, dangerous. Ship's captains, you buildings by the sea had widows' walks because the wives would go watch for their husbands to come back in on the ships.
Yeah,
a lighthouse tending job was not considered dangerous.
You weren't out in the open ocean, but because you're on land, right? But the issues that could arise and the isolation that it creates is not much different than being out on a ship somewhere in the middle of the ocean. It's just you're physically standing on the ground,
right?
But here we see, right? Something extraordinary could happen.
So I don't know. This one really intrigued me. I felt drawn to it as I was putting it together. So I don't know. There's definitely I feel a connection to lighthouses. I always have. So.
Well, it's a cool thing because lighthouses, like I was trying to describe earlier. There is energy, pun intended, because they're lights. Oh, I'm funny. I think I'm funny. That's all that matters. But, there's energy there, and there's passion. And the tenure of time that people spend in these things, it's their life's work in some cases because of the job for life. And they are really neat things, and they still exist. They're littered up and down the East Coast. I mean, not so much in the central part where we are, but you go up to New England, they're still there. There's a lot of them still in the Carolinas and South. Augustine, the big one, obviously in the paranormal world. Yeah, but,
which is one that I want to get to. I mean, but even
road trip, that's one we can drive to. So yes,
yeah. Even Maryland has some Assateague or
in the Bay, right?
Assateague Island, I believe, has it's either Assateague or Chincoteague, one of those.
Correct.
Emmy did not like
Chesapeake has them as well. We're not looking out on the ocean so much as we're looking inside the Chesapeake Bay. There are lighthouses,
right?
Certainly, and they're all reasonably close to us.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Emmy does not like being up on the top of the lighthouse. Just so you.
Look, I don't either. So I was in the Outer Banks a couple years ago, and there was one nearby where we were in Nag's Head, and so we went to it, and got up to the top, and I realized at that point I'm not afraid of heights. I want to be very clear. I'm not afraid of heights. I'm afraid of falling from them. Two different things. I can stand on the ledge, but I don't want to be at the edge of the ledge.
It's that sudden stop at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, you see it coming, you can't do anything about it. So, but you get up there, you don't realize how tall these things are until you're on one, right? And then the beam would have been there. If you're out on the walk, you're not paying attention where the beam is, you were blinded. Like there is some occupational hazard here. And obviously, you shouldn't be out there at night. Everything should be in operation. You're inside the unit,
right?
All that stuff. And they are forever tall, and the views are phenomenal from there. So which is really cool, and that's what it should be because the beacon can be seen.
Right. And Jenny said, "I recommend Abiscon. I hope that's right. Lighthouse in Atlantic City, and go all the way up and outside." Jenny, I think is this one that your group investigates sometime? I think I've seen some stuff, which I'll definitely have to get to if you guys go there again.
That's cool.
But for me in throughout theatrical world, the lenses that are used in lighthouses are type of lens that we use in theater. It's called a Fresnel lens. Obviously, the magnitude is much higher in the Lighthouse ones, but it's just amazing what Fresnel was able to do with light and glass. It just it's amazing.
There's Jenny's reply. Yes, Abbotsford is one of those locations.
Perfect. So,
all right,
another one we got to put on the list, Jamie.
I know, right? Just keep coming. I said this. I said this before, and I will say it probably every week if you let me. The world of the paranormal world has no walls, and there's always another place and another opportunity, and sometimes you have to know someone to know about it, kind of thing. And in this case, we know Jenny, which is great, because it was not on my radar at least, and now is. But it's funny, and I think you can say this, and probably everybody out here watching or listening can say this too. If you start talking to somebody about the paranormal, they will start talking back to you about it. And you'll get some conflicting stuff, whether they're a believer or not believer, that stuff, everybody's got their line, but everybody has something they can share about it. And I think that's fascinating, because it's such a thing. It's not in the shadows anymore. It's not that thing over there,
Right.
The world has changed for us as investigators and as enthusiasts and as just interested people. TV's helped, I guess, with putting things out there, but those of us who are never going to get to that level, and we're still working as best we can to get to those things and doing that stuff, and it's really kind of fun and cool, just because everybody's got a story, and it's great. All right, so we have another comment here from Heather. We did a vacation in St. Augustine, and we visited the lighthouse. You do not realize how big it is until you are standing looking up at it. Yes, love St. Augustine, my favorite town in the USA. So old. Yeah, I think it is the oldest city in the U.S., the first city anyway, down by the Spanish.
Yeah, for me, it's a toss-up between Williamsburg, Jamie. I think you know that, and St. Augustine. Williamsburg is closer, and I can get there more often, but St. Augustine is really, really cool. So,
well, St. Augustine technically is closer by flight than driving to Virginia. So
this is true, but
the view is a little different.
Yeah. Jim had said that he had been to Absecon Lighthouse, and that he'd been to that one. It was creepy, and that he had been to Sandy Hook. And Todd and Carmela said Sandy Hook walking around the building is creepy. So,
all right, now we're on a lighthouse tour. Okay, sure, let's do it. Oh, Todd and Carmela, I walked to the top of the Key West Lighthouse, stopped multiple times. Sure.
Yeah,
I've been to that one as well. Although that's the one thing that's probably the only thing I remember about being in Key West.
Yeah. The key lime pie. Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
So, lighthouses are always interesting too, climbing up those steps, because they are very narrow.
Yeah.
and just
Well, I'll say this from being in the Outer Banks. It's a tourist attraction, so the stairs are they wind and they go up, and then
right.
But then they also are the same stairs that come down, and it's just an open event. So not like everybody goes up at the same time. You're up there, you all come down at the same time. They're going up and down. You're passing people on this narrow thing where you're just doing sideways. And if you're at all claustrophobic, it'd be a little weird. Or afraid of heights, all that stuff. So it's not for everybody.
No, I mean I know some people who were up against the wall taking sideways steps to get up and down.
Yeah, well, that's me at the top, right? So because that walkway also isn't the biggest thing. It's maybe 3 feet wide. And again, if you're passing somebody, you got to pass on the outside, especially because I'm hanging onto that wall.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's my story. Definitely an interesting one. Like I said, I was drawn to it, and I think there's more to find out about it. But
and thank you. I mean, I was thinking about this earlier today. Knowing we were going to Scotland for this episode, but we have done We've done episodes in Scotland, Ireland, Africa, Mexico, and Central America, Asia with the Dragon Triangle, right? Where else? We've been around the world. So that's my point earlier about how wide the paranormal world really is. It's everywhere. It's not just a U.S. thing and not just a local to us thing. I mean, we're graced by having a regular gig in a place where we get to investigate on consistently, but there's stuff everywhere, and there's so much stuff we don't even know about. And that's the beauty of having this opportunity. That you guys help us all the time by sending stuff forward. Hey, how about this? What about that? It helps expand the horizons a little bit, but there are no bounds to this. It's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Bert here.
Well, yeah, the unknown interests me. That's why I love the paranormal. Absolutely, I agree with you, Bert. It makes us climb under stages at theaters, right?
So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it, Jamie.
Yep, I don't argue that at all. It's a good story. I like it as well. Thank you so very much for this topic. I was, we joked a lot about how to say this overall around the way, leading up to the Eilean Mor, or however way to pronounce it. But however way you say it, it's a really cool story. Yeah. It's still a mystery, right? Because it's unsolved.
It's right. So, and like I said, you got to listen to the Scottish guy tell the story, because there's nothing like that accent. Yeah. So
okay. Well, it's like Mike Myers back in the day. When Saturday Night Live, he did a skit called "All Things Scottish." And if it's not all things Scottish, if it's not Scottish, it's crap. So, and he had a store that sold Scottish things.
Right.
So, that was the worst imitation accent.
I was going to try to read some of those with a Scottish accent. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to insult the Scots.
There's got to be an app for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, we should probably move on, right? We're over a little over an hour or so. How did that happen, by the way? Gosh. So upcoming episodes. Next week, I'm going to tackle what's called the third man syndrome. I'm not going to give too much away, but I think once we start talking about it, y'all will be a little more familiar. October 8th, the week after, Chad's going to tackle Wilson Castle. After that, I am going to dig into what's called the Well of Barhout in the Middle East. And then we have a special guest coming up after our spectacular event. We have Daryl Marston himself as the investigation follow-up coming out of the Boobies Brewery event we're going to have. We're going to talk the investigation. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about what he's up to. He's got all kinds of irons in every fire, it seems, in the paranormal world these days. So it's quite an interesting dude. And if you haven't met him, super personable, really cool guy to talk to. It'll be a fun episode. And then there's more after that, but it's spooky season. We're not going to give away the 29th quite yet. I think we have to figure out what we're doing actually. So we'll talk.
Yeah.
And then after that, the usual things here, but we are coming up 3.5 weeks out from the Spooktacular event. Again, Daryl Marston is joining us at Boobies Brewery in Mountjoy, PA, along with with Ron Iacovetti and Lourdes Gonzalez. With Staticom Project and our team, and a whole lot of fun. There's a meet and greet and some Q&A and all that good stuff in advance. I'm sure Daryl will have some copies of his book, which looks a lot like this, part of the House of Wills. Yes, Chad, I have my own copy, finally. And then I know this is not the most common thing, but Ron Iacovetti is a 5-time author. This is one of his called Paranormally Speaking. I'm sorry, Ron. An interesting one as well. So he'll have a lot of things to share there that night as well. So come out, hang out with us. I think there are still 4 tickets left. So it's getting there. If you haven't gotten it, there's still time, but you got to move quickly because they're going to go. And once they are gone, this is a closed event. We will not have more available. So, tickets are available at the Boobies Brewery website. So after that, though, before that and after that, we have 2 investigations with the public coming up on the 28th. There's one Saturday, which seems like it was so far away, and now it's here, right? So, but Saturday evening we'll be at the brewery. Tickets are still available there, and then on the 12th, right, the week before, and then the ending of the year, we're going to wrap up on November 16th and December 7th. And how is it the end of 2024 already, sir?
I don't know.
We say this every week, and every week it gets even closer. So, gosh, it is amazing. Time flies when you're having fun. That's really
exactly.
True. So
I don't know. Did you see that what Todd and Carmela said? They have a room booked at the Mall.
Yep. Perfect.
So
perfect. We will all come over and investigate your room.
I was going to say
we've been in the basement and investigated the basement of that building, but not the rest of it yet because it's always booked. So, but yeah, it's going to be great, and I'm glad you guys are going to get down to hang out with us. So it'll be my first time meeting you all, so I'm excited. I'm really excited for this. It'll be super cool. And then, the usual social stuff. You likely found us on Facebook or YouTube if you're here with us on the live show tonight. But the usual streamers will be tomorrow afternoon and thereafter. So, if you found us there, thank you. Either way, hopefully, we've moved some microphones around and so forth. So hopefully our audio is up to par at this point. And we appreciate you sticking with us all through. A little over an hour episode. It's a bit long for us, but hopefully well worth it. If you're out there on the streaming services, feel free to give us a like, give us a comment. A couple stars would be great. 5 would be perfect. Not 6, not 7, not greedy. 5's great.
And Jamie, if people want to call us out as their favorite podcast on other podcasts, we're all for that too.
I watched a replay of another podcast last night, so I'm not saying who that is.
Jenny.
Thank you. That was so very kind, and we appreciate you, and we're looking forward to your podcast coming up in a couple of weeks. So we'll be fans there too.
So and we'll say that you can listen to Jenny's podcast at 8:00, and then jump on ours at 9:00, and it sounds like a perfect couple of hours.
Tuesday night has become must-see TV.
There you are.
Yeah, and I know the Lynches. I'm sitting here with 2 screens, and my second screen gave me a notice that Bert and Heather Lynch are watching us. In a picture of their living room. I had to give it a heart. So it is technically must-see TV because it's on a TV screen.
Exactly.
So, thanks, guys.
Hey, Jenny, could you put the name of your upcoming podcast in the comments so we can, so we can share that out to everybody?
And what an interesting team you have as well. I'm so excited to see how this comes through. And the first episode is going to be outstanding. So.
So yeah. Any closing thoughts, Jamie?
Oh, wow. There's just so much stuff going on for these next couple of weeks. Here we go. So Jenny's new podcast coming up is called Seekers Chronicles Paranormal Historians. So, and if you don't know, if you've not met Jenny Colucci, I have not physically in person met Jenny, but I've had too many people tell me that she is the nicest person in the world ever. Like nobody else comes close. I think Chris Allgood said it really well yesterday, that a Disney character come to life, with the birds and flowers and things floating around her at all times. So, so cool. So, and here we go. Starts on October 1st. I'm sorry, I'm thinking the 3rd. I apologize. And then no, not a warm up act at all. Standalone, really good work. So looking forward to it. And here's the nicest thing. Sorry, Chad. I think I chat. I'm not touching it. We can't both click at the same time. Jim, thank you so very much. I don't remember what Tuesday nights were like before you guys. It was dark. It was dreary. Yeah. I remember. Yeah. So, and thanks to everybody for joining us. We really appreciate this kind of conversation. We carry on with you guys a lot, and we appreciate the banter that this live show has. I'll say this to those who are watching us later. That comment, and we'll get it. We'll certainly see it. We'll definitely get it. Reply back to you as well. Just because you're not here with us tonight doesn't mean we won't engage with you. Which leads me to the last thing. I'm going to back up back to the screens. If you at all have something you want us to cover, if you have a story of your own you'd like us to present for you, feel free to shoot us an email at paranormallenspodcast@gmail.com. It is the best and fastest way to reach us. You can send it through Facebook and stuff through the Jott-Nyx team page, but we'll get it. Don't get me wrong, but this is much faster. It goes right to Chad, and he's a responsible adult in this group.
I wouldn't go that far. And
he'll share it with me. Dude, let me give you credit, okay?
All right.
One of us has to be. I'm not claiming that. No. All right. So as always, thank you. from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate the time that you spend with us. So we don't take it lightly that you do. And we look forward to being able to see you next week, and we'll talk about some more cool stuff. So,
Third man syndrome.
Third man syndrome. Third man factor is another way it's been known. So, yes, it'll be fun. Okay. All right, sir.
All right. So next Tuesday, we'll see everybody then. If we don't see you this Saturday at Boobies, but
yep. And don't forget next Tuesday, start watching Seekers Chronicles, Paranormal Historians before us, and just roll right over. And if they go long, they go long. We'll be waiting. Don't worry, we'll be here. So, absolutely. So, and we'll look forward to seeing all this stuff coming up soon.
So, all right. On that note, good night, everybody. We'll see you soon.
See you next week.